Thank you for tuning in to episode 6 of Feelings in Flannel. Just a heads up, there is a spoiler alert in this one. So as we introduce our number 2 on our list, you might want to be careful tuning further if you haven't seen either of those. But please continue liking, sharing, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe and let's get this thing going. Stay tuned. Feelings in Flannel is hosted by us. I'm Adam.
I'm Amylia.
And we are a father-daughter combo who are setting out to debate the merits of love, romance, humor, and faith in RomComs new and old.
Listen and join us as we seek to name the top 5 rom-coms and discuss masculinity and femininity together and how that plays into role. Make sure to like and subscribe and share it with your friends on social media.
Stay tuned. All right, here we are, episode 6.
Movie 2.
Movie 2, here we go. I decided today to adorn the classic flannel because, you know, it's called Feelings in Flannel. And so today I decided that, you know, red and black plaid, it fits. You know, I referenced Paul Bunyan, I think, in episode 1, and I'm channeling my inner Paul Bunyan. Mir, of course, is here as normal up against the table, creating safety for us men as we explore our emotions here. But yeah, I see you chose no flannel today. So that means you show up with all the feelings?
Yes. I wore flannel in our first episode to kick off the theme, but I have worn pink in every episode to maintain the feminine and the feeling side, since feelings is in pink. And I went with my sweater today because my number 2 movie, this is the vibe or the theme of the movie. I'm ahead of the game.
All right, you're speaking words that I don't fully understand, vibes, themes, things like that.
Theme?
Well, I mean, I know what a theme is, but I don't. You know, as a movie goer, movie watcher, I seek one thing: to be entertained. That's it. I'm definitely not a movie critic, which makes part of this process, you know, a little bit difficult. I'm not thinking through the cinematic beauty of a movie. I just really want to be entertained. So I don't walk away thinking, what was the theme of that movie? Apparently you do. Maybe you start there.
Yes, definitely. I get really, if it is a good movie, to me, what makes a good movie, a good play, a good anything cinematic-wise, I have to feel like I'm like sucked into it to where I'm losing track of time and I feel like I'm in the movie and I feel like you almost have a relationship with these characters.
Yeah.
And I think my brain just naturally goes there, finding themes, finding messages, finding the vibe, I guess, if you want to say that. But
well, I will say there is an experience to movies that is incredible. The ability to kind of pause life, check out a little bit, is great. And that's not a male or female thing. That's just a human thing, you know, to be able to put aside everything that else is going on and kind of live in a world that's, you know, it's completely fiction at that point. But also a bit of a risk for rom-coms, right? To check out and make that your world.
yeah, in movies, like, you like to be entertained. I do too, but I also like to feel, I want to keep thinking about it after I've watched it. Like, I want to not necessarily be moved in a certain way, but I want it to stick with me and let me think about it. And like, why did that stick out to me so much? And it may be a little bit much, but I'm not ashamed. I am all in with these feelings. I have journaled about some of my favorite chick flicks or rom-coms and why they are my favorite and what the theme and message and how that can be related today. Because, I mean, every rom-com has some component of unrealistic
Yeah.
expectations to it, even if it ends realistically or whatever.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. It kind of has to, or we wouldn't watch it.
No.
Right? I mean, if the movie equivalent is, man picks up woman, jets on down to the Aldi to get groceries, stops at Taco Bell on the way home, ends the night with a falling asleep on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that's real life. Nobody's trying to tune into that. They tune into that every day because that's pretty much how we live. But yeah, there's always an unrealistic component, and that's the risk, right? It's like that's unattainable, and but we start to believe that it is attainable on some level. Yachts and flying somewhere for lunch or whatever. But I was thinking this earlier, and so this is hot off the presses. Perhaps, maybe something we can do in the future is go one step further and really start ranking or categorizing Hallmark movies. And here's why I was thinking about it. Because every Hallmark movie is the same. I'm not entirely sure how you would order or rank those. But I'm wondering, could a Hallmark movie fit in a top 5? Would it show up even in our top 5? And perhaps it will or won't. But I was thinking about that really randomly. I've been thinking about a lot of things I don't normally think about because of this process, but that was one of them. Just throwing that out there.
Well, if we do that, I will only be watching Christmas Hallmark, personally.
Okay.
Because regular Hallmark, it's especially newer ones, they're not good. And I'm sure that offends a lot of people out there, but that's all right. But Christmas Hallmark has an extra layer of corniness, unrealistic expectations, and magic that you just can't ignore.
I might be willing to suggest guys might be more inclined to engage this process during the holiday season than they would otherwise. It gets dark earlier. We live in the Midwest. It gets dark earlier. The sitting down and being comfortable is, you're more inclined to do that. As long as it's not a football night. Mm-hmm. It's important.
Or maybe the women can have an incentive of, you don't have to buy me anything if we can watch this movie on this night. And bump out football a little bit because it gets too much fame.
I don't know about that. Maybe a trade. Maybe I'll do this on Friday night so that Sunday you at least be in the room while I watch a game.
Compromise. This podcast is a marriage advice as well.
Oh, fixing relationships on Feelings in Flannel. Yeah, well, today we're going to get into our number 2. We've been working our way down for those who haven't been listening since episode 1. First of all, shame on you. Just kidding. But roll it back, grab episode 1 and start from there. We explain the whole thing. But we're going to be talking about number 2. We've been counting down from our respective top 5s, RomComs of all time. And we're debating pieces of that as we go along. So we're going to get into that. But I think it's probably worthwhile to just stop before we get to that and just mention again, what is Feelings in Flannel? What is this? Why'd we name it that?
Well, the Feelings in Flannel we named it after we decided we were officially going to talk about RomComs because we were trying to decide what's a title that captures the masculine side and why you would be even interested in doing something like this, talk about topics like these. And then the feminine side, the feelings, but also maybe a twist on feelings aren't just solely exclusive to women.
What?
And men can have feelings too. And they do have feelings. They just don't express them as the same as women.
Yep.
And I feel like we did this, I mean, we've said it, but spend time together. But also, I think now, as we've been talking and conversations have sort of flowed, and sometimes it got a lot deeper than I expected this podcast to get. But I think that is appealing to the audience because they can relate. Like we're talking about relating to characters on a movie. They can relate to a voice, or if they're watching, they can see us. But relate to, I've thought that, or I struggle with that, or I feel that same way too. And using a fun topic, but also using that, like you said in a previous episode, to allow people to see in a little bit of what our relationship is like. It's pretty honest and vulnerable, and hard conversations happen, but also fun conversations or silly conversations like this, which is how this even came to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a fun opportunity to listen to something that's a lighthearted, but also has good, or I don't want to sound boastful, but like sound advice or sound thoughts, or just something to think about.
Well, I think it also too, for the men listening, are getting to hear a perspective that's not coming out of the mouth of their spouse. And hearing you describe this is, and you don't speak for every woman, but there's a lot of similarities between the female gender and the male gender, right? There's, if you're a male, you probably have a lot of things in common with other males, and female, same way. And so hearing that, and, we've intentionally tried to keep these episodes to fit within the average drive to work, 25, 30 minutes. And to be able to hear that along the way and maybe pick up some stuff and go, whether you're on the female hearing it from a male or a male hearing it from a female, and say, I didn't know that, or I hadn't thought about it like that. And hopefully then be able to apply that, some vague generalities, and say, that might be true about my, significant other. So yeah, a lot in this, feelings in flannel. There's a lot behind those words for us, you being a psychology major and working in the field of psychology. Now me being a counseling major, we're digging into some of these, and it's not because that's my favorite. My favorite is to grab the axe, to do some hard manual labor, to work on cars, to get greasy and grimy. That I really love that. I enjoy that. But recognizing across my life, there's feelings in here too. And just because I cover them in flannel and grease doesn't mean they don't exist. So we are really getting into that. But we're also having fun just counting down our top fives. And it set us up to have some great time together over the last several months, and watching rom-coms and laughing and being a little bit goofy as we prep for this. So you ready to go to number 2?
I am ready.
All right. So let's do this. Dang it. I had you. I was in your head for a second.
All right. I think I want to keep the pattern, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna choose myself.
You're consistent, if nothing else.
Yes, or it's OCD, but that's all right. That's besides the point. So my number 2, like I said, my outfit, I wanted it to fit the theme of this movie. And this movie is what I mentioned earlier that was tied with While You Were Sleeping as a number 1 for many, many years. And so that's why it's surprising. But this movie is number 2. It is not number 1.
All right.
And this movie, again, I've said it about pretty much every movie that we said so far. I've probably watched this movie more than I've watched any of the other movies.
Oh, wow. Okay. For the record, I've watched most of mine once.
In the past months.
Well,
over time.
Let's be fair, because I've seen them all before. But I don't know. There's only 2 of my top 5 that I know for sure I have seen more than twice. And those, one we covered last episode, I have seen it multiple times. So yeah, we're in different boats there. I don't know if that's a man thing or not, but I don't rewatch many movies. It's just kind of like, I had that. I was entertained. I'm done.
I will only rewatch a movie if I absolutely loved it. Like, there's only so many movies that I'm like, I've already seen it. I don't want to see it again. Usually, any movie that is rom-com, not any. A lot of movies that are rom-com, I will rewatch. A lot of movies that are musicals, I will rewatch. The Greatest Showman, I will never, ever get tired of watching that movie, ever. I live and breathe that movie. And
It's a good one. I'll give you that.
It's phenomenal. And with these, I have watched them over and over again. This one, I've watched a lot because this was one of the first rom-coms or chick flicks that I ever watched. So it has that component. Mm-hmm. But it also, I feel like I relate to the I don't want to say the theme, the only word that keeps coming to my mind is vibe.
Oh my gosh.
Probably my generation that keeps using it over and over again. But I feel like my personality fits in with the storyline or fits in with the character's personality a little bit.
Okay.
And also has my favorite actor of all time period, Never Will Change. So my number 2 movie is You've Got Mail. And that is Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. Tom Hanks is the best male actor. That is a period at that end of that sentence. And Meg Ryan is my second favorite female actress, second to Sandra Bullock.
Okay.
And this movie, I love this movie. The details in this movie, I have to be careful not to go into too many details because I could spend probably 5 episodes just talking about this movie. But do you remember this movie?
Oh yeah. This is definitely a classic. I have seen this more than once. Because it just comes on. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you have a subscription to live TV of any kind, this movie is coming on semi-regularly. So I have seen this more than once. It's a great movie.
And movies like this always come out, I feel like, more around the fall time because they're cozy. This movie's another one like While You're Sleeping is just cozy and it's just kind of relaxed. It's not in your face. It's not really super heavy in comedy.
Yeah.
It's more on the rom side. But it has a sweet tone to it, and the characters are fun. And Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan have done a few movies together. Mm-hmm. Sleepless in Seattle, which is another fantastic movie.
Yep.
And this one, for me, the realistic component is a little bit with the online kind of, is how they meet. It's online dating, if you want to say it like that. It's early
Chat
2000s.
Room. Yeah.
Yeah. 2002, I think, is when it came out.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was, and it was just made the year I was born. It was made for me.
All right.
But, I mean, they're both technically cheating on their significant others.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We just overlooked that part.
Okay.
I don't condone every aspect of this movie, but...
or any movie for that matter.
But the way I justify it is both partners realize they don't really want to be in that relationship. They're comfortable with it. They're used to it. And both of them are scared to take a risk. Mm-hmm. So that's how I justify it's okay that they were cheating. Cheating is not okay. But...
they also were not married. Is that right?
No. They were just
neither one were
dating.
Married. Okay.
Yes. So they meet through the online, and it's really great. And for my criteria... Well, I'll wait until you reveal yours. But before I get too excited and just completely cut you off forever, you can
How
share
wild would it have been if my number 2 was Sleepless in Seattle, and we both had the same actors, but different movies?
That would be kind of cool.
That is not the case. However, I think you chose the sweater, I thought, there for a second until you said I just connect to the character. I thought you were going to have the same. So it was close. And so I think the vibe in this one similar. If I can, drop down into your world and use that. My number 2 is The Holiday. I
Wow.
I really liked this movie. Jack Black, first of all, is just an incredible actor. He has definitely a type, but even in this, like he takes that same type. He's still him. Is still Jack Black. Like you can still see School of Rock in this movie, but it's so much dampered. I guess it's softened by just him being a really authentic and genuine person, and so I did really enjoy this movie, and so I'm gonna say it fits by vibe. It's a similar vibe in the sense that it's the season, that kind of thing. But this is my number 2.
I can't decide if I'm surprised or not because I was with you when I watched it. When I watched it with you is the first time I've ever seen this movie.
Oh, okay.
So I've heard of it a lot. It's a lot of people's favorite, and it was really good. Personally, I'm not a huge Cameron Diaz fan.
Same.
So
I'm not either.
I struggled to put this one. It's not even top 10. It's not. It was really good and cozy. Jack Black and Kate Winslet. Yes, and their characters together in the movie were really, really sweet. If the movie would have just been just them, I think I would have liked it a lot more. But I didn't really like Cameron Diaz and whoever that guy's name is, Jude Law.
Jude Law.
Apparently.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. In fact, it was one of the reasons that I almost didn't put it in there is because those Jude Law and Cameron Diaz, their characters, that the whole kind of patient pursuit isn't there. Like, I mean, they meet and they're immediately engaged into intimacy. What really started as a one night stand. That part of it, not so much. The other side, though, was so powerful in the relationship, the patience, the authenticity, him giving her space to heal. I mean, that's kind of the storyline, really, is both female characters need a space to heal from relationships or perceived relationships in one case. But I think he gave her that. And then, of course, there's the character, and I'm not going to remember his name, the older gentleman, that really, they become the friend group that allows them to really build relationship together. And I think there's this caring component in Kate Winslet's side where she had met this older gentleman. And the movie itself was just wholesome, minus the one night stand that happened. But, there was redemptiveness in it. And it was just a good movie. The only thing it did not connect for me was soundtrack.
I don't really remember the soundtrack.
Yeah, I didn't know most of the songs, honestly. So
how did this movie go from almost not making it to going to number 2?
Well, I think because it was of the ones that we've talked about so far, it is the most realistic. There's no real extravagant expressions. I mean, even in Cameron Diaz's character, in that they build their relationship basically hanging out in a house. And for those who haven't seen the movie, I mean, the female characters trade homes for a period of time during the holidays, and then they kind of just live within those worlds that they've never been. And each relationship just kind of forms around stuff that happens to us on a regular basis. So I think it was that component that really pulled it up to the top. But of course, it was still hitting the other pieces. There's the patient pursuit in one case. There's the redemptive side of it in there as well. And it just really hit. And also might have been the mood I was in that day. I don't know. I watched this in the summer, so I don't know. It didn't fit the vibe in the summer. So there's my number 2, The Holiday. Your number 2 is You Got Mail, which is an American classic. I mean, that movie has been watched probably by every romantic couple.
As it should.
Ever. So, yeah, well, walk us through. You've been holding yourself back.
Yes.
Walk us through You Got Mail. I know some things about this movie. You've talked about this a lot. I know some things about why you like this movie so much. So let's start there. Her job in the movie. Let's talk about that.
This movie was, I think, I'm not confident in saying it's the first chick flick I've ever watched. I don't really know. But it's one of the first that I've ever seen in this realistic movie. Most of it was Barbie or Disney. Mm-hmm. But her character owns a bookstore, a very small, quaint shop around the corner is what it is called. And she works there with 2 of her friends and then a woman who's a friend of her mother's, and her mother passed away. So this mother, or the bookstore, is an inheritance. She took over it after her mother passed away. And watching this, plus it goes through the seasons, but Christmas is a season at one point and it's decorated. And watching that movie, I decided, I was like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to own a bookshop and I wanted to decorate for Christmas and I want to work with some friends, and because I love to read. So it speaks to that part of my personality or hobbies or whatever.
So you saw yourself in the character. Like, that's who you were aspiring in some ways.
Yes. I do not own a bookshop and I do not work in a bookshop. Not even close. Completely opposite. I'm using my degree, which I'm thankful for that. But this is my plan B if I change my mind about my degree or I don't go for a master's, whatever. Or when I'm retired, then I'll just do that.
Yeah.
And Mom and I talked about that being our plan B, just quit our jobs and open a bookshop together. But that's one component. And the other component was just how their relationship formed. Because, they fall in love with each other through email. Mm-hmm. And at first I'm like, because email, I don't know, I feel like it takes out the personal side of it. You don't see them.
Right.
But then, they end up meeting. They don't know they've met yet because he owns this, what I would consider the Barnes & Noble of the bookshops. And her shop would be like, I don't know, the unorganized bookstore or something in comparison of known how big they are. Her shop was big, so he came along. And all these people in New York are like, wow, this is so cool. And Joe Fox is his character.
Okay.
And they meet inadvertently because they're in competition with each other now, business-wise. Mm-hmm. So then they hate each other because she's like, you're ruining my business and you don't have a heart and you're rude. And he's like, you're stubborn and stuck up and all this stuff. Uh-huh. So they hate each other. But then it goes back and forth between that and then being in love online.
It's interesting, though, in this one, I think You Got Mail set up the tension, the conflict to be real, and not just sexual tension. Because they weren't even aware that the relationship they were fawning over?
Yeah.
We'll go with that. Was the other person. So the contention is between small business and big business, which was a bit of a political statement and still probably could be. But yeah, I think that's really interesting here that they didn't put those two together, that the tension and the hatred is actually just sexual tension. It's business. So yeah, it jives a little bit there.
Yeah, and then one of my favorite parts of it is when they decide they're going to meet. And I like the realistic side of he's nervous. And I like how he says to his friend, what if she's not attractive? And his friend says that, and he's like, well, she has to be. I've spoken with her. In my head, she's beautiful. So I like that they address that, because that's very, very realistic, especially with online dating. If you don't know what they look like, people are like, I don't care how you look. On some level, yes, you do. And that's part of falling in love, is the physical attraction. And it can grow as you fall in love with who they are. But that's an initial factor of why you even introduce yourself, whatever. So I like how they introduce that. And then I like how when he realizes it's this woman who he's loathed for so many months, that he's hesitant to even go. He's like, she's impossible. Like, I'm not going in there. So I like how he's not like, oh my gosh, like, wow, starstruck.
Yeah.
I liked how he's now at war with, she's this online, but she's this and when I'm with her. And, but then he takes that chance, and I like how we as a viewer are like let in on this secret, like they don't know for a while, then he does know.
Right.
She still has no idea, but then he makes her fall in love with him in person as they hang out. And then it switches to her being at war of, do I give this online guy a chance, or do I go with this guy that I know I do like, but she doesn't know they're the same guy.
Yeah.
And then my favorite line in the whole movie is the end where they meet in that garden, and she says, I wanted it to be you. I wanted it to be so badly. And it's just so beautiful. And then the dog. And when I recently went to New York with my sister-in-law and her family. And my New York references with this movie, and Elf a little bit, because it's set in New York. And we didn't have time to do that, but I'm like, one day I want to go back and go to all these places in New York that this movie has. And then, the cute moments of he knows her through the online when they talk, and they have this shift. He has that shift when they're on this date at the coffee shop. She has no idea he's the guy. Right. She feels stood up. But then
because he knows them.
Yeah, he knows. Yeah. So he starts to fall in love with her then, and then the shift happens. And with your component with redemptive is like they both admit to, we've treated each other terribly business-wise. And then there's this redemptive factor of she is willing, her shop closes, spoiler alert. And she's
supposed
willing.
To say spoiler alert before you spoil it, but whatever.
But it's a classic, so I'm sure everybody's seen it. I apologize. But yeah, she becomes more open-minded of, okay, maybe I can give it a chance. Why is it so big? Because, I mean, she was hurt. But the shift for her is when she was sick, and he shows up with flowers and takes care of her. And they have the look, that magical look. And then...
that gives you a heart squeeze.
Yes, a major one. It's like...
a major one.
And this whole movie, it just, like, has my whole entire heart. And the soundtrack is in the other thing. They have, like, it's oldie songs like Rockin' Robin, Splish, Splash, and, you know, Signed, Sealed, Delivered, stuff like that. So it's
there's a good soundtrack, no doubt.
I own that soundtrack, and it's great.
It's so obvious that this one is your top two, and that it almost has all the things. It's been 33 minutes already. We are
30 more minutes.
We are over our time, and that's okay, because again, I think for this, it's being able to hear both perspectives, like why, and again, to just sum it up, you know, I don't have a lot to say honestly about The Holiday, but it's so realistic. I think it just lands, and I think that's important. Sometimes it diminishes the feeling that I have sometimes when watching rom-coms. I can never be that. This, I can be this. There's a lot of just hanging out, and that's more doable. But You Got Mail, that's a tough one. That's a home run for sure. I
struggled very, very hard to put this at number one or what my actual number one is, because they both are so good. I could talk for 30 minutes about each movie. But this one was put to second, and I'll explain why when we reveal number one, why number one is my number one.
Which consequently is next episode. We're going to reveal the number ones. There will be drum rolls and things. I don't know if that's true, but it's about time to get to number one, and we've been counting down, and that means we're getting closer to the debate. Like, we've got to figure out what is going to be the shared top five, and we got to muddle through. And I can say there are some I'm willing already from year five. There's some I'm willing to say, yeah, that needs to be in the top five. And I don't know which ones I'm willing to give up yet, but I think we're going to be able to come to a compromise. So I'm looking forward to it.
I think I have a weird mix of nerves and confidence going into the debate because I suck at debating. I literally in high school would take a bad grade. I am like perfectionist when it comes to that. I want good grades. But when it came to debating, no. I'm like, I'll be quiet and take a bad grade.
Your inner Binkard is coming alive. That's what's happening right now.
But I also feel confident debating in this area as well. Other like stuff, no. But this is my niche, like I said. So
it's your niche. It's your niche. Well,
I think I can bring it.
I enjoyed it. I love your number two. It's a good pick. It's a good pick. So another good episode.
Mm-hmm.